fine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda with the Activated Earth, and I'm here today with Looby Macnamara, and I have her bio here that I'm going to read to you. I'm excited to be interviewing you today, Looby. So Looby leads a productive career as a pioneer of permaculture and cultural emergence, as well as time spent at Applewood Permaculture Center, hosting and teaching courses in gardening on the land, and being a mother of 2 daughters. She is the author of Cultural Emergence, also People and Permaculture, 7 Ways to Think Differently, and Strands of Infinity. People and Permaculture is the first book globally to translate the use of permaculture principles and design for people-based systems, widening the definition of permaculture and making it relevant and accessible to all. She is one of the partners of the Mother Nature Project, which empowers mothers on their transformation journey. Thank you for being here today, Looby.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I would love to hear your emergence story. You know, how did you find permaculture? What was it that led you to that?
Yeah, it was really one of those happy of coincidence that took me into permaculture, and I really at that stage didn't really know much about it. So this was back in the late 90s when I think I was writing a university essay, and I honestly can't remember what it was about, but someone said, you need to know about permaculture, go and talk to this person, JP. And I was like, okay. And then I spoke to him, and I have to confess that like at the time I probably didn't really understand much of what he was talking about and how it related, and where the idea of placing ponds so it reflects into the house, and all sorts of things that were a bit over my head in understanding. But he also then took me to his garden, which was like a little patio, so no direct soil to plant in, but it was just full of a life there. It was full of flowers and ponds in washing up bowls, and not just one, but numerous ones around there, and feeding me his salad. And so it was a real sensory connection with permaculture from the word go. And then from that leading to doing courses, doing my PDC, the permaculture design course in Brighton, which I did over weekends at the same time as I was doing my university degree. My university degree was human sciences, so it was a bit of everything: anthropology, ecology, philosophy. And permaculture came along, and it started to make these connections between all these diverse subjects which I had been studying. So that was useful on doing that for me. And then it also gave me this whole new way of learning, this whole collaborative, co-creative, fun, empowering way of learning, which was quite different to my university experience. And that really woke something up in me, and it really woke up this idea of being part of the solution with who we are at the moment, rather than the university paradigm of, well, do your degree, then do your masters, then do this there, and then eventually you might be able to make a difference. And the permaculture philosophy and ideology there is that we can make a difference now with what we're bringing now, and that when we do that in a collective way, then we have the solutions together. And that really just woke up this passion in me. So the passion I had for permaculture started more with the process than with the content, because at that time, I grew my first spinach. That was the level I was at, and it was super exciting that I was growing my first spinach. And I wasn't really at the stage of having much more than a garden to grow, you know, small patch to grow in. So I wasn't coming at it as a point of like, great, I can you know, redesign my farm. I was coming at it from a point of like, wow, and really enjoying the people. That was the other part of it as well, was the people connection was huge, and the fun we were having together, and the way we would spark ideas of each other, and they would grow, and it would feel like anything is possible. So yeah, that was part of my my permaculture journey to start it.
Nice. Thank you for sharing all of that. I was thinking about what you were saying about enjoying the people, and I know that just for everybody here, if they haven't heard of permaculture before, there are the 3 tenets of how you make a decision on what to do, which is, does it take care of the people? Does it take care of the earth? And is there anything to give back? And if there is, are you giving it back? So it's people care, fair share, earth care. And I know that in your book, this People in Permaculture book that you have, it includes people in the systems, and which often we don't do. I see that there's a disconnect with nature. How have you, how did you bring that part in? Could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is my book, People and Permaculture, which I wrote. It came out in 2012, and it the decision to write it was, yeah, it took a while, but it was this idea of, you know, how I came to permaculture as well was not because I needed a way of gardening. It was because I was infused by it, and then that enthusiasm grew through the people connection, and it awoke up my skills and passion. And I do garden, I do enjoy gardening, but I see permaculture as so much more. And I was aware that it was so much more in other people's lives as well, that they became more hopeful, more proactive, more visionary, more grounded, as well, and that permaculture can do all of that. So while permaculture is best known for making healthy, productive gardens and small holdings and some farms, so it's best known for what it does on the land, actually there was this whole hidden story of what it does for us, or how it turns us into healthy, productive ecosystems, and with all of
Mhm.
our connections. And that so I was aware of this potential, that it, or this, not even potential because it was doing it, but this story of how permaculture was changing people's lives and lifestyles and thinking, that would then manifest in many different options. So in their relationships, in their business, in their families, in their communities, in every interaction they were having, and their whole life purpose. But then that story wasn't necessarily told in the permaculture literature. So I wanted to share that, to share how we can use the permaculture principles and design for our own lives, because not everyone has access to land as well. So that's the idea of making it more relevant to
Mhm.
people, because they can start to say, well, I don't have access to land, but I do have access to people. I do need to know how to look after myself better. I do need to know how to look after my family better. I would like to be more effective with my time. I, you know, so all of these things that permaculture has the potential for. So I wanted to write about that. And then on the other side as well, I was also aware of this question that came up quite early on in on my permaculture journey, is like, well, if we have all these earth care strategies and we know that they work and we know they make a difference, why are they not being implemented? And the question always comes back to people, why they're not being implemented. It's always about people. And then moving into my next book, it's often about culture, and the cultural patterns that we're following. And so those two motivations led me to write People and Permaculture, this idea that it has this potential to be hugely beneficial to anyone in any situation, and that if we don't pay attention to the people care, we can't gain traction on the earth care.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I know I want to talk more about that. And I also want to ask you, now that you do have the wonderfulness in your life of getting to be on the land, and you have it right there behind you. And I'm just wondering, how has that affected you personally to be able to live closely with nature?
It's been just this absolute honor and joy to be here. It really has. It's been it is living the dream. My partner Chris and I, we both wanted to a place to live and to run courses and to garden and to have as a permaculture demonstration site for a decade before we actually manifested it. And in that time, I felt like I was a plant in a pot, and that my roots could only go so far. And then from having moved here, it's like, okay, the plant's in the ground and it can really grow both its roots and being stable, and what's happening, what I'm able to give out into the world as well. And that is definitely in part with this huge connection I have with the more than human world here, with the plants, with the buzzards and the bats and the dragonflies and the badgers and all the other beings that also call this place home, and that have called this place home for many of their generations way before we arrived here. And so it gives me much of a different perspective on time and future generations, and on being part of the web. So I'm here. I don't feel like I'm here even as steward of the land, which I know people move from being owner to being steward of the land or guardian of the land. And I would say that I'm part of the community of the land here. I'm one being out of the millions of beings, if we count all the insects and the plants here. I couldn't fathom, we've got 20 acres, and I couldn't fathom how many beings that actually is in numbers. But so it gives me a sense of humility as well, that I am just one of these beings here, and that there's much more power in the more than human world than we know as humans, that we only have a sort of a sense of it, and there is much more power and wisdom in the more than human world, that we can tap into that wisdom, and that it becomes an embodied feeling in our body. So it taps into our more than humanness in our body, our natural, it taps into us as nature.
Yeah, I'm really feeling like you've received this deep sense of connection and oneness, as part of the whole ecosystem, where you are. That's beautiful.
Mm.
And I'm wondering, you mentioned thinking like nature in your
Mm.
book. And I'm wondering if this is part of, when you talk about thinking like nature, is that oneness part of it? Could you just talk about that a little bit?
Mm. Yeah, so that's one of my 7 ways to think differently, which was the question we're often asked is, what is permaculture? And and trying to sum it up in a word or a sentence. So my summing up is that it's a way of thinking differently, or 7 ways of thinking differently was my response to that question. And so one of those ways is thinking like nature, and that can have many different layers to it. And one is around connecting with our own nature. So as we are part of nature, and that when we respond to our own natural cycles and patterns, it can bring us personally into more alignment, and it can bring us collectively into more alignment as well, so that we know what times of days work well for our energy levels, and how that might flow with our work patterns. We know seasonally what patterns work. We know what is healthy for our bodies and what isn't healthy for our bodies. And those lessons come through and support us in becoming more healthy, and that they support us in knowing that we are part of these bigger systems, that we are an evolutionary body that has got 4.5 billion years worth of wisdom within our bodies that can respond to external context and changes, and adapt. And so that flow, we start connecting with that flow, and that flow of wisdom within ourselves, and that's part of the first step. The other side of that is learning through gardening, or learning through all the other life strategies that there are in the world, so looking at a bee, for example, and then thinking, okay, what are the lessons from a bee that we could bring into our group facilitation, for example? What lessons might there be from the oak tree that we can bring into how we look after ourselves? So we can learn from nature through the metaphors of the more than human world, would be another side of the thinking like nature.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love to use trees as an example for people. When I talk to people, that I feel like the trees are really showing us how to be, because they like to be in community, and they are healthier and work better when they're in community with each other, with their communication and their resource sharing. And I love that, receiving wisdom from nature. I want to go into what I feel like is your solution, to, which is your new book, the cultural emergence book, your solution to what you see happening on the planet. But I would love to hear your perspective on what you see as the problem, and how you are turning that into a solution, in regards to the book. If I'm being clear, I'm really curious to hear your perspective on what you think is wrong, and how it can be fixed.
Well, I touched on earlier as people being the limit in for our earth care systems, and then that taking that forward to culture being the limit. And so I see that the situation on the planet at the moment, politically, socially, healthcare, ecologically, so in so many ways, it is down to our cultural choices and the cultural worldview that we're operating from. And that means that the patterns of, so I'll step into this word culture for a minute, because that's often a word, you know, it's a word that we use all the time. It's not a new word to people, but it's not necessarily a word that we've really explored what that means. And so my working definition of culture is that it is a complex web of unseen and seen patterns, so unseen and seen patterns of thinking, behaving, interacting and feeling. And so we're this complex web of patterns, some of which we're really aware of and some of which we aren't aware of, is directing all of the behaviors and all of the thinking that comes before the behaviors, all the ways we're interacting with each other, we're interacting with the world, all of our emotional flow as well, or not, maybe not all of it, but it certainly creates these channels of feeling as well. And and that if we started to really address those patterns and reweave those patterns, then we would see the change happening. But too often we try and just tap in and change one action or one thing, but we don't address what's underneath it and the patterns that are causing that to happen. So we might have a petition, you know, or direct action against one thing, and maybe we're successful in that, maybe we're not successful in that, but then other things just pop up and it's the same. It's just then seems like the same problem in a different outfit, because we haven't addressed what's underneath that. So I mean, I'd love to think that I had, you know, the entire solutions to hand. What I think with the toolkit that I've created, and I've created this with John Young, is uh, you know, I've put here toolkit for transforming ourselves and the world. So it is a toolkit. If we need to use it, we need to use the practices that and then together we start reweaving it. So it's not this kind of one size fits all, here, just take that and plonk it in your life and it will magically do everything. It's like, you know, you can't just buy a set of paintbrushes and paint and think you're a painter. You know, you actually need to do something with the resources to become a painter. You need to practice, you need to do it regularly, you need to enjoy it and accept feedback from the process and learn how to do it. So you know, I've no doubt that if, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of people started using Cultural Emergence Toolkit regularly in their lives, that would make significant differences on the planet. And it's not just people having the book on their bookshelves, they have to actually use it and bring it forward.
Yeah. So what do you see
Yeah.
is needing what kind of transformation do you see getting to happen if this reweaving occurs?
So part of it is this understanding of what is culture, and so that we can really then start to unravel our own personal culture and question that and understand what is the cultural conditioning that we've had, and do we believe in it? Is it still appropriate for us? Does it need updating? Because so many of us, we're wandering around with decades old cultural conditioning that we're not even aware of, that we're, that just, we don't understand why we're thinking in that way. We don't understand what is the impulse to consume. And it's like, well, of course we've got an impulse to consume, because we've had decades of cultural conditioning from the advertising companies. And so we can start to examine our own personal culture, which will then enable us to see what's happening out in the world, and then through that as well, to have an understanding of systems. So I'd say there's 4 pillars to the toolkit. One is around understanding culture and being able to question that more and re-examine it and put in more positive cultural practices. And then the other understanding is about systems and this word emergence and this possibility for radical revolution and change that might come from any direction, and that that can lead to fertile emergence when we start using the toolkit. So that's the systems understanding in there. And then from people and permaculture, the design web is key, so that we can actually use this understanding to vision and design and act upon this more hopeful future, so we can really make the changes that we want to make. So it's this supportive process that leads us from not just questioning, oh, why am I like this, why is this habit in my life, to actually, I'd like to have this habit in my life, let's design a process to have that. And then the other component is the nature connection processes, which really nourish us on this deep level. And this is a lot of the work that John Young has brought into our collective process of co-creating cultural emergence. Is how does that nature connection support us, and then how can we actually bring to life for ourselves this nature connected culture, so that's how we operate in the world, is that we have this personal culture of being connected to the more than human world, connected to ourselves and connected to each other as well. And so when we start bringing all of those things together, so we've got culture, systems, design, and connection, when we start bringing those 4 things together with the other the rest of the toolkit as well, but if we just, those 4 key things, then really there's a lot of scope for radical positive evolution in our lives and in our communities and in our cultures.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I look at culture here in the US, it's almost as if there isn't one, because culture does require connection. It's something that you share and do with others. And we don't do a lot of that here unless it's a holiday, and then we all get together. and that's what we have for culture. So if people actually embraced this connection to themselves, to each other, to the more than human world, as you're calling it, what do you think like the grand picture of the future could be, like on a global scale? What would shift here on this planet?
Well, that's a nice, expansive question to go into. I really love this, and this idea of having these expansive questions, so that we do get to dream into this, so that it doesn't become that the only futures we can imagine are these apocalyptic futures, which are quite honestly easy to imagine, and there's films and books aplenty about them. But find the books and films that are plenty about, you know, the positive future, and there aren't any. There are, you know, there's a few, yes, but they're quite thin on the ground. And this is, I think, part of the cultural conditioning, that we are expecting this apocalypse to happen, and here we are amidst quite you know, evidence of that happening in many different ways. So what could happen if we all started connecting with each other? Well, I think that, you know, quite often we focus on these kind of personal development leaps that we might have, that we might have gone through a personal health crisis, for example, or a job loss, or you know, a healing journey, or moving, you know, taking a big step into moving house, or you know, so there's times when on a personal level we take a big leap, and there's a certain, like, this is who we were before we took the leap, and this is who we were after that. And the leap might not be a moment in time, it might be a healing journey that takes a year or two, or a divorce that takes time. But there's a definite kind of here we were and here we are, and they're two different stages. So when we move into this connection journey, then we've got this potential for collectively to be who we were collectively before and who we are collectively afterwards. And that's what we need to do, that we need to make this collective leap.
Mhm.
And that, you know, that's quite a tall order given our political situations globally, and it's possible. You know, I think anyone that has been through that personal turning point in their life, that step change, knows that from where they were, they couldn't have imagined where they could get to. They knew there was something there, they knew there was some difference that they wanted, but they couldn't quite see where that was, or what that would look like and feel like and be like. But they knew it was there, it was there. And I think a lot of us can sense this collective possibility that we have, and know that we need to take this collective leap, and that this collective leap will be quite a big ask. And it doesn't necessarily need to be all of us as well. That's also something that, you know, we maybe get caught on thinking, how on earth are we going to get these politicians or corporations or these neighbors who are really annoying, or, you know, like, who think so differently, you know, how on earth are we going to get all of these people to take this collective leap? No, I think that, you know, that actually, if enough of us take this collective leap, then it will pull other people into the what's the phrase, into the, like, the
New paradigm.
yeah, yeah, it's like, it's the we'll create this slipstream that other
The
people can follow.
slipstream, right? Then they have no choice. They're just in it.
Yeah, And yeah, so it is a whole shift in thinking that will then ripple out into behaviors that it will be like, why on earth are we polluting in this way? Why on earth are we having all these global inequities? Because of course these global inequities are going to cause civil unrest and violence and crime. Of course this, we can start noticing and being more aware. So I think there is this collective possibility that is more possible to come around when we are in connection with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And that's a really beautiful concept. And I love that you project this hopeful vision of the future, because you're right, there really isn't enough of it. And if there's, I feel like we've covered like all of the things in such a beautiful way. And I just would like to know if there's anything else that you think might have got left out that you would like to say before we finish today.
Yeah, so I think is about the power of emergence, and I said there might be a poem that wanted to be
Oh,
spoken,
yes.
and
Poem.
I think it is. It might take me a moment to just find it. I do know my here it is. Yeah, the power of emergence, and that, there's the two words, culture and emergence, and the word emergence is really potent, and it's around us all the time, but we don't necessarily tap into the possibilities of it, and we take it for granted because it's around us all the time. These were seeds, and now they're flowers, which is an emergence, and it's magical,
It
and
is
it's like
magical.
if we were an alien from space, we'd be like, really? What? How does that little thing turn into this? Like, that's not possible. And it's like, well, yeah, of course it's possible. Here it is. And so, we've got these beautiful calendulas, which were seeds that I saved from last year. And so this, when we're talking about this collective leap to somewhere different, it can seem really unlikely to happen, but it's actually probable that it will happen, that there is this impetus from life for it to happen. Yeah, so I'll like to share with you a poem about emergence. Life is emergence, and emergence is life. The entire history of Earth is a story of emergence, of attraction and interaction, of merging and emerging, of relationship building, for collaborating and co-creating, for mystery and surprises. Emergence is provocative and dynamic, exciting and daunting, charismatic, wild and adventurous. It's colourful, messy and graceful, unfathomable and wonderful. Organic, elemental, fractal and fluid, it's awe-inspiring, irrational and crazy. Life is arising and surfacing, appearing and birthing, renewing and replenishing, flowing, interacting and opening. Emergence is cosmic and cellular, embodying and connecting. It's paradoxical, reliable and unpredictable, elusive and ever-present. People are emerging culture, sharing, growing, evolving, creating, adapting, stepping up, stepping out, moving along the path of discovery. Cultural emergence opens fields of encouragement, unleashing collective genius to live within the question of humanity. Fertile emergence holds radical potential for humanity's healing, for metamorphosis and shape-shifting within the perfect storm. Is multi-layered, holographic, quantum leaping, belief bending, rule defying. Cultural emergence is hopeful and magical.
Mm. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I want to make sure that everybody knows how to reach you. And these things will be shared in the email, but please go ahead and tell us here how people can find you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I have a website which is cultural-emergence.com, and there's lots of videos and podcasts, and you can get books direct from me, and there's also links to where you can get the books in other countries as well. I know Chelsea Green have got my books in the US, which is a good way
Yeah.
to get them.
And that's where I ordered mine, and it came fast. I think I've received it in about 3 days. So if you are in the US and you want to buy any of Looby's books, that is a great resource, and you won't have to wait for them to make the trip across the ocean. So,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for being here, Looby. I feel very uplifted by your energy and your message. And I really appreciate that you gave your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. And I do online courses as well. So do go to my website as well, and you can sign up. There's a free Cultural Emergence taster course, and then there's longer online courses that I do as well with John Young. And so they're available globally as well. So sign up to our newsletter and you'll find out more about when the courses are.
Do it. I signed up. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Looby, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. I wish you lots of luck with this summit, and thank you for offering that into the world. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.